So we'll take a look at the grid settings on Maschine in this video, and we can set these up or access the grid settings by using the shift, and this follow button becomes the grid button. And there's a couple of things we can do within the grid to optimize performance and playback. We'll start by looking at the step grid. And for starters, if we have it on 16th notes, as we have done when we were doing step sequencing, we go to our step mode. Let's change the loop length here, or change one of the patterns. I think one of these patterns is shorter. Yeah, so this pattern is just a 1-bar pattern. So you go back into step with the step grid set to 16ths, means that we have 16 notes in the bar. But we can actually change this using that step grid, and we could change it to we could change it to 32. So now, even though I've got a 1-bar pattern playing, I've actually got 2 sections, so I can put 32 notes in per bar. If I want some kind of really sort of drum flam type style rolls, we can even go to 1/64, 1/28, or right down to we could snap the step sequence into quarter notes, for example. So you can see it's moving very slowly now, so I can only input 4 notes per bar. And this applies as well to the quantization. So say if we put the step grid to 8th notes, and I go back and record something in, say this one of these pads we don't have any events on, so pad 12. And if I go into my events now, you can see it's pad 12. It's snapped the recording, because we had the quantization set on, it snapped it to 8th notes because of this step grid snapped to 8th notes. And a bit of a side note here as well, actually, as we looked at putting the quantization, play, record and what have you via the software, if we go to settings, we can actually just very easily access the quantize here, record, play, record or none, and also the metronome settings. So we did look previously at optimizing this in the software, but it's actually incredibly easy to do via the hardware as well, so I thought I'd mention that whilst we're here. So yeah, back to the step grid. So it's quantized it to 8th notes. 16th notes is the default, and that's probably the most useful, but you can optimize that here, and also you could take it off completely. So now if we record some stuff, if there's no, it's not going to record or adhere to any kind of snapping whatsoever, even though you've got the quantize, play, record on, because you've got this step grid turned off. It's just going to override it, so you just won't get any kind of quantization happening there. And we can also optimize the nudge. So we looked previously at the shift nudge to nudge events, and we can optimize this. So say if we have the step grid is 16th notes, we can change the nudge to step. So now we go to our events and select one of the events, so this events, and now nudge it in 16th note increments. If we go back in here and the nudge step, we change this, that step 2 is half of one of these notes, so now it would be half a 16th note, as I think it was previously. If we go back to my events, shift, it goes half a 16th note. But if I go back and go to the grid and change this to a quarter note grid, now the step is half of a quarter note. So back to events, you can see it shifts half of a quarter note. So some nice way for optimizing the step grid there. I tend to have this set to step and this to 16ths, and I find that the easiest way of working for me, but obviously it's good to know that you can optimize some of that stuff. So in the next video we're going to come and look at the scenes and how we can start adding scenes to our project and start putting stuff on the timeline. So in that video, we'll also cover the extra grid settings here for grid perform and grid arrange. Actually, jumping back, just remember we haven't covered this pattern here. So say we haven't looked at pattern length here. We can optimize this. So I'm looking at this pattern. I can change the pattern length to 3, 4, something like 8 bars. We go to our events. I mean, we haven't got any other extra events, so let's double up the pattern. This pattern, double it up. So change the length to 16 bars. Go back into our arrange grid. The pattern quick is off. So if I go back to this pattern and want to change the length, it changed it down in bar increments. If we go back and we put pattern quick on, now when you edit the pattern length, it does it according to musical terms that are going to be useful for you. So it goes down in 4-bar increments, down to 8 bars, then down to 4 bars, then 2 bars and 1 bar. So you can scroll up, so you can change the pattern length in stuff that's going to be useful. Generally, you're not going to write a 7-bar pattern. You can do if you want. So having that pattern quick on, access by a shift grid, and in your arrange grid, turn the pattern quick to on. And we'll look at the rest of the arrange grid settings and the perform grid settings in the next video when we start to look at scenes.